Alive, both. It came slope beyond the area ground teams had cleared. A narrow strip of land where mud met stone, where the storm had cut a fresh scar into the hillside. Ryan's pulse steadied the way it always did before a breach. Instinct wasn't loud. It was certain. That's him, Ryan said quietly. The pilot swallowed. You sure? Ryan didn't answer immediately. He was already mapping the descent in his mind. Wind direction, slope angle, potential debris fields. German shepherd dogs didn't cry unless something was wrong. They endured. They protected. If Atlas was making that sound, he wasn't just lost. He was holding on. Ryan grabbed his pack and clipped the rope to his harness. The sky above them had turned a bruised shade of purple. Night would be merciless here. Temperatures would drop fast. A wounded dog in that terrain wouldn't survive another dark cycle. As the helicopter settled into a hover just above the treetops, Ryan looked once more at the silent forest below. Somewhere in that stretch of fractured earth, a German shepherd dog was waiting, and this time they weren't leaving. The rope burned hot against Ryan's gloves as he descended through the thinning rotor wash, boots skimming pine branches before striking unstable ground. The helicopter hovered above for only seconds before pulling away to conserve fuel, its retreating sound fading into the vastness of the mountains. Silence closed in fast, thick and absolute. No engines, no radios, just wind sliding through trees and the distant rush of water somewhere below the slope. Ryan stood still for a moment, letting the forest settle around him. The storm had rewritten this hillside. Mud had shifted in heavy waves, carrying stones and tree limbs downhill like scattered bones. The air smelled of wet soil and split bark. Every step threatened to slide. He adjusted the strap of his pack and listened again. Nothing. Then, faint and strained, the whimper came back. Closer now, not carried by wind this time. Rooted. Fixed. He moved toward it carefully, boots testing the ground before committing weight. Training told him to scan high and low, to read broken foliage, to watch for fresh slides. But this wasn't enemy territory. It was worse. Nature didn't hesitate. A patch of disturbed earth ahead caught his eye, claw marks carved into soft mud. Deep, desperate. Ryan crouched and pressed his fingers beside them. The prints were large, unmistakable. A German shepherd dog. Atlas had tried to climb. The slope steepened sharply beyond that point, falling into a narrow ravine carved by runoff. Ryan edged closer and peered down. There, half hidden by shadow and tangled branches, a sable shape lay wedged between two fallen trunks. Mud coated the dog's hindquarters. One back leg was pinned awkwardly beneath debris. His chest rose shallowly, sides trembling with each breath. Atlas, Ryan said quietly, voice low and steady. The dog's head lifted weakly at the sound. Amber eyes, clouded with pain but fiercely aware, locked onto him. Not fear, not panic. Not panic. Recognition that someone had come. Ryan slid down the slope carefully, boots digging in. The ground shifted beneath him, small rocks tumbling into the ravine. He moved slowly, hands open and visible. "It's okay," he murmured. "I've got you." Atlas let out a strained breath that might have been a growl once, but now sounded more like exhaustion. Up close, the damage was clearer. The hind leg wasn't just trapped. It was lightly fractured. The storm had forced him downhill, and gravity had done the rest. Ryan assessed the debris pinning him, one trunk heavy but unstable. He braced himself, muscles tightening, and lifted just enough to free the pressure. Atlas didn't snap, didn't lash out. He held still, trusting. When the weight shifted, Ryan dragged the larger branches aside and carefully pulled the dog free. The moment Atlas was released, he tried to stand. He collapsed immediately. "Easy," Ryan whispered, kneeling beside him. The German shepherd dog's body was trembling from cold and strain. Mud clung to his fur in thick layers. But his gaze never left Ryan's face. There was something almost unbearable in that look, not helplessness, but determination. Ryan removed a thermal blanket from his pack and wrapped it around Atlas's torso. He examined the leg quickly, swollen, misaligned, painful but not fatal if stabilized. "We're getting you out," he said, more to himself than to the dog. Night was closing in fast now. The sky had turned fully indigo and temperature was dropping with it. Extraction would take time. The helicopter would need coordinates. Ground transport would be slow on this terrain. Ryan reached for his radio. Static. He shifted position, climbed a few feet higher, tried again. A faint crackle this time. "Martinez, I've got him," he said. "Alive. Injured. Need medevac coordinates." Silence stretched long enough to tighten his chest. Then, broken but audible. "A copy. Fuel tight. 20 minutes. 20 minutes might as well have been a lifetime in cold mountain air. Puh! Ryan looked down at Atlas, who lay still now, breathing shallow but steady. One ear twitched at distant sounds. Even injured, he was listening, guarding. "You stayed," Ryan said quietly, brushing mud from the dog's face. "Didn't you?" Atlas blinked slowly. Atlas blinked slowly, eyes never wavering. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain returning. The forest around them creaked and shifted as if unsettled by their presence. Ryan tightened the blanket and positioned himself between the dog and the open slope, shielding him from wind. For the first time since landing, doubt brushed against him. If the helicopter couldn't reach them, he pushed the thought away. Atlas had survived 19 hours alone in broken terrain. He wasn't giving up now. And neither was Ryan. The cold arrived without warning. One moment the forest held the fading warmth of the day, and the next it exhaled something sharp and metallic that crept through fabric and into bone. Ryan felt it first in his fingers as he tightened the splint around Atlas's injured leg, using a lightweight brace from his kit and strips torn from his undershirt to secure it. The German Shepherd dog didn't resist. He flinched once, just once, then lay still again, jaw clenched, breath slow and controlled as if he understood the necessity of pain. "Good," Ryan murmured. "You're tougher than you look." Atlas's ears twitched at the sound of his voice. Even in exhaustion, he tracked every shift in the trees, every crack of distant branches. Protection wasn't something trained into him in that moment. It was embedded deeper than instinct. The dog's body trembled from cold and strain, but his eyes remained alert, fixed on Ryan as though he had chosen him now too. Above them, the thudding return of rotor blades echoed faintly across the ridge. Ryan grabbed the radio again. "A visual marker ready," he said, scanning for a clearing large enough for extraction. The ravine was too tight, the slope too unstable. The helicopter couldn't land here. It would have to be a hoist. He looked at Atlas, calculating weight, balance, angle. Lifting a full-grown German Shepherd dog wasn't impossible, but injured and frightened, even the calmest animal could panic mid-air. One wrong movement could send them both into the ravine below. The blades grew louder. Wind whipped through the trees, flattening brush and sending loose debris tumbling. Ryan crouched low over Atlas to shield him from flying grit. The dog let out a low sound, not fear, but confusion at the sudden storm of air. "It's okay," Ryan said firmly, one hand pressed to the thick fur at his neck. "Stay with me." A rescue line dropped through the branches like a thin lifeline from the darkening sky. Ryan secured the harness around his own waist first, then carefully positioned the secondary sling beneath Atlas's chest and torso. He moved slowly, narrating each step in a steady voice. Tone mattered, energy transferred. "All going to feel a lift," he whispered. "Don't fight it." Atlas's breathing hitched as the harness tightened. His muscles tensed automatically. Ryan locked eyes with him, and something passed between them, not language, not command, recognition. The winch engaged. They rose together. Branches scraped against Ryan's boots as they lifted through the narrow opening. The ravine fell away beneath them, shrinking into shadow. Atlas let out one sharp cry as his injured leg shifted slightly, but he didn't thrash. He didn't bite. He held still, body rigid, trusting the pressure of Ryan's arm wrapped firmly around him. Cold air rushed past them as they cleared the canopy. The canopy. The helicopter door slid open wider and hands reached out, guiding them in. The moment Atlas touched metal flooring, he collapsed onto his side, chest heaving. His eyes searched wildly until they found Ryan again. "I'm here," Ryan said immediately, kneeling beside him. The pilot glanced back, relief visible even in the dim cabin light. That was close. Fuel warnings flashing. Ryan nodded but didn't look away from the dog. As the helicopter banked toward the nearest veterinary trauma unit 40 miles south, Ryan ran his hands over Atlas's fur, checking for additional injuries. Cuts, bruising, dehydration. The dog's body told the story of the night. He tried to climb out, tried again and again. Claw marks along the ravine walls proved it. He hadn't stayed down. "Your handler's alive," Ryan said quietly, unsure if Atlas could understand words but certain he could understand tone. "He's waiting." At the mention of his human, something changed in the dog's expression. A flicker. A surge of fragile strength. Ryan had seen men hold on to life for less. The helicopter cut through the night sky, red lights blinking against darkness. Inside the cabin, the world narrowed to the rhythm of Atlas's breathing and the steady vibration beneath them. Ryan felt something unfamiliar press against his ribs, not adrenaline, not mission focus, something softer. He'd pulled teammates from worse. carried wounded men across hostile ground, but this was different. There was no battlefield here, no enemy, just a dog who had refused to abandon hope. And a man who had heard him when no one else did. The veterinary trauma unit was still awake when they landed, fluorescent lights cutting hard against the night like a promise that hadn't given up. The helicopter doors opened to rushing footsteps and urgent voices, but Ryan heard none of it clearly. All he could feel was the weight of Atlas in his arms as he carried him down the metal ramp, the German shepherd dog's breath warm but uneven against his forearm. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and heated plastic. Bright white light exposed everything the forest had hidden: mud, blood. Blood. The unnatural angle of the splintered leg. A team of technicians moved quickly, hands practiced and steady. They slid Atlas onto a wheeled table, voices low but efficient. A pulse weak but present. A possible femur fracture. Signs of dehydration. Atlas's head shifted as strangers surrounded him. His ears flattened slightly. Not aggression, not fear exactly. Just confusion. He searched the room, eyes scanning until they found Ryan standing a few feet away. Ryan stepped closer. "I'm here," he said again, softer this time. The veterinarian, a woman with tired eyes and calm hands, looked at him briefly. "You his handler?" Ryan hesitated for half a second. "No," the answer felt incomplete. They administered a mild sedative. Atlas resisted it at first, muscles tightening as the needle pressed into his skin. But Ryan rested his palm against the dog's neck, steady pressure, steady warmth. Slowly the tension eased. Atlas's breathing deepened. His eyes fluttered, then closed. Ryan didn't move. X-rays confirmed the fracture, clean but severe. Surgery would be necessary. The vet explained risks, recovery timelines, possible complications. Ryan listened, nodding, absorbing facts the way he did during mission briefs. But this wasn't strategy. It was fragility. They wheeled Atlas toward the surgical wing. The hallway suddenly felt too quiet. Ryan stepped outside to call the dog's owner, a former Marine who had been discharged from the hospital only hours earlier. The man answered on the second ring. "They found him?" The voice cracked instantly, like it had been breaking all day. "They found him," Ryan said. "He's alive." There was a long silence on the other end, not empty, full. "He stayed," the man whispered. Ryan looked through the glass at the closed surgical doors. "Yeah," he said quietly. "He did. The surgery lasted nearly 3 hours. Ryan didn't leave." He sat in a plastic chair beneath humming fluorescent lights, forearms resting on his knees, staring at nothing. Outside, rain began again, tapping lightly against the windows. Nurses moved in soft rhythms down the hallway. The world felt suspended between breaths. He'd told himself this was just another extraction, another response to a call, but something had shifted in him on that mountainside. The way Atlas had looked at him, pain held back by will alone. The way he hadn't panicked mid-air. Trust like that wasn't commanded. It was given. Finally, the surgical doors opened. The veterinarian approached, surgical cap still tied at the back. "He made it through," she said simply. "The leg's repaired. He'll need months of recovery, but he's strong." Relief moved through Ryan slowly, like warmth returning to numb fingers. "Can I see him?" She nodded. Atlas lay wrapped in blankets, one leg carefully bandaged and secured. Tubes ran gently from his forearm. Machines blinked in soft patterns beside him. His chest rose steadily now, no longer shallow. Ryan stepped to the bedside. For a moment, Atlas didn't stir. Then one ear twitched. His eyes opened slightly, heavy from anesthesia but aware enough to recognize the shape standing beside him. His tail thumped once against the blanket. Weak, certain. Ryan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding since the helicopter lifted off. "You're stubborn," he murmured. The German shepherd dog's eyes drifted closed again, but his breathing remained calm, anchored. Outside the window, rain washed the city streets clean. Inside, machines hummed like distant rotors finally at rest. Ryan stayed there long after midnight, listening to the quiet rhythm of survival. And for the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel like something waiting to be broken. Morning arrived gently, sliding through the hospital window in pale streaks of gold that softened the edges of everything it touched. The storm had passed in the night. The air outside looked scrubbed clean, washed of yesterday's violence. Ryan hadn't slept. He sat in the same chair beside Atlas's recovery crate, elbows resting on his knees, watching the slow rise and fall of the German shepherd dog's chest as if the rhythm itself was sacred. Machines no longer beeped urgently. The fort had been removed an hour ago. Only a thick bandage and a stabilising cast wrapped around Atlas's hind leg remained as proof of what he had endured. When Atlas finally stirred, it wasn't dramatic, just a slight shift of his head, a tightening of muscle beneath fur. His eyes opened fully this time, clear amber catching the morning light. He blinked once, then he focused. Ryan leaned forward. "Hey!" Atlas studied him in silence, memory settling back into place behind his gaze. The mountain, the rope, slowed his gaze, the mountain. The hands that lifted instead of left. His tail moved once against the bedding, a soft thud that felt louder than it should have. A knock came at the door. The owner stood there, leaning heavily on a crutch, one arm still in a sling. He looked smaller than the stories men tell about themselves. Exhausted, unsteady, but alive. For a long moment he just stared at the crate. "Oh, Atlas," he whispered. The dog's ears perked instantly at the sound of his name. Recognition flared. His head lifted higher despite the effort. A low sound escaped him, not pain, not fear, relief. The man stepped forward slowly, kneeling awkwardly beside the crate. He pressed his forehead gently against Atlas's through the bars. Neither of them moved for several seconds. Ryan looked away, giving them privacy in the only way he knew how. "He stayed," the man said quietly, voice rough. "He wouldn't leave me during the slide. I tried to send him away when it got bad." He swallowed. He wouldn't go. Ryan nodded. He didn't need the rest of the story. He had seen enough in the claw marks carved into the ravine wall. Atlas had fought the mountain itself before he'd surrendered to gravity. The veterinarian entered with discharge instructions, explaining rehabilitation schedules, hydrotherapy, controlled movement, patience. Months of healing ahead. The man listened carefully, nodding, one hand never leaving Atlas's fur. When the formalities were finished and paperwork signed, the room felt smaller somehow. Quieter. The man turned to Ryan. "I don't know how to thank you." Ryan shook his head slightly. "You already did." He stepped closer to the crate one last time. Atlas's gaze shifted to him immediately, steady and aware. There was no confusion in it now. Only that same silent understanding from the mountainside. "You did the hard part," Ryan said softly. "You held on." Atlas's tail moved again, slow but certain. Outside, the sun climbed higher, warming the pavement and drying the last traces of rain. Life moved forward the way it always does. Cars passing, doors opening, people unaware of the quiet battles fought in forests and hospital rooms. Ryan walked out into that morning without ceremony. No cameras, no headlines, just the steady rhythm of his boots against concrete. Behind him, through the glass doors, he could see the man carefully guiding Atlas toward the waiting truck, one step at a time. The German Shepherd dog moved slowly. Weight shifted carefully away from the cast, but his head was high. His body leaned gently into the man's leg, not from weakness, but from closeness. Ryan paused for a brief second before turning away. On the mountainside, under the scream of rotors and the weight of fading light, he had heard something fragile and nearly lost. A sound most would have mistaken for wind, but sometimes survival doesn't shout. Sometimes it waits for someone willing to listen.